Thank you very much for being here, sir.
Thank you for having me.
In the lead up to the centenary of Indian cinema, what is it that you feel that we should be celebrating, and what is it that makes you proud of having been a part of this journey?
May I just thank Milind first for those wonderful words of introduction. I'm least deserving of it, Milind, but thank you so much. I've truly believed in this concept because I think it answers partly what you're asking me. 50, 60 years ago, Indian cinema was looked upon as something that was infra-dig. People from good homes were looked down upon. They never went into the film industry. It was something that was not entirely full of etiquette that society wanted it. And therefore, to find myself on a platform today where we are talking about the big Indian picture, and to have an actor that is connected with the film industry to be replying to some of the questions that relate to the Indian film industry in itself is an achievement, I feel. Apart from the fact that the Indian film industry is celebrating 100 years of its existence, and that itself is a great achievement. But what I really feel proud of is that Indian cinema has almost become a parallel culture now of our country. I don't know whether this is ethical enough to say, but I think that there are some facts which need to be understood. There are times when people go abroad and they know the actors from the country, but they don't know the name of some of the politicians or the leaders of the nation. We were looked upon very cynically and with a lot of sarcasm and with a lot of criticism because of our content. Yes. But one of the factors that they failed to realize was that our content was designed for, I hate saying this word common man because I feel that we are all common. But really for that worker on the street who worked in extreme circumstances and at the end of the day wanted some entertainment to get over this very dark life that he had to lead, and just go in there and enjoy himself and see some beautiful scenes and hear some good music and see some beautiful people enacting them. And that is something that they did not realize. And fortunately, that very content now has become our USP in a sense. So I think that that is a victory in many respects, and I'm proud about that. I hope that we progress further. We are reaching out to as many people as possible. All our stars are happily recognized in every corner of the universe, and that speaks a lot for the Indian film industry.
Yeah. So there are n number of changes that have come in the last 100 years, but there's a common saying that the more things change, the more they remain the same. Are there some of the features of the Indian movie that you feel have endured, for better or for worse?
Well, the endurance part I've just spoken of,
yes.
that we haven't changed our content.
Yes.
But I think within the last 2 or 3 years, we've been noticing a marked change in the quality of the films that are being made. And there are many factors that could actually be responsible for that. I personally believe that ever since the opening of the economy in the country, there is a very large section of people that have suddenly become very rich, about 350 million middle class. They need entertainment. The other thing is the advent of television in our country. We have over 400 channels, which I believe is the largest number of TV channels anywhere in the world. Now that has given an exposure to the people that live in the country to content which is coming from all parts of the world, could be superior in its quality. And when they see that free of cost almost within their homes, why would they want to spend 500 or 1,000 rupees to buy a ticket and see something which in their minds could be inferior? That has become a kind of an impetus for many producers and directors who want to really compete with the best in the world, and they are doing so. And that could be responsible for the change that is happening. There is a marked, excuse me, there's a marked difference in the educational system that the country is going through. People are more educated. They're able to decide and decipher what is good for the country and what is good for the nation. I know that each generation have their complaints, and they talk about the written word or the writing of earlier films not being the same as it is now. The poetic element, the literary element perhaps does not exist now. I was speaking to Anurag Kashyap, who's a very prominent director and largely responsible for much of the change that is taking place. And he said people want to hear the spoken word now, rather than be burdened by great philosophy or literature. And that is the kind of language that is now percolated into cinema, and therefore you perhaps don't get to see that flowery language that used to be there, say, 20, 30 years ago. But as I said, each generation changes. And when I came in 1969, we were looked down upon as, not being as efficient and as likable as the generation before us. I think this is a very common phenomenon, not just in films, but in every walk of life.
Yeah.
You will always find that, oh, hamare zamane ki baat aur thi.
Actually, in films, I feel it's slightly different because you came in towards the end of what is commonly referred to as the golden era of Indian cinema. I want to know, you've already touched upon this a little bit, but I want to know what your take is on how we look back at our cinema. Because I was speaking with Karan Johar earlier, and he was very emphatically talking about how films back then were a lot more liberated. I was speaking with Ranbir Kapoor, and he was, to quote him, he said, they were men, we're just boys. They put their lives into the movies. So I want to understand, were movies back then really higher art, or is this perception simply what Marcus would call the charitable deceptions of nostalgia? Because normally what happens is that the people who belonged there think it was better. But in the film industry, it seems to be the younger generation who a lot of times thinks that those guys were great.
Yeah, one of the reasons could be, I'm purely guessing, is that they would lose a lot of respect, the present generation, if they didn't talk favorably about the other generation. But in a sense, I think that there is more admiration for the greats that have, decorated our firmament, the film firmament, and the kind of cinema that they made. If they're saying it was more liberated, we want to know liberated from what, and what were their intentions. We've had constraints in today's cinema on what we can show and what we can't show. They were, in today's generation, I think they were more, in a sense, imposed as opposed to the earlier generation, which automatically felt that this was something that would go against society, and they were intelligent enough not to go beyond certain barriers. I guess that is the difference. But then, to restrict something that you're going to see in the middle of the street and not be showing it on cinema would again be a digression of the thought process of the maker. I keep saying this all the time, that in the 50s and 60s perhaps, the negative character, the villain, was either the Thakur of a village who had usurped the land of the farmer or the common man, and therefore he was looked upon as this great big ogre who needed to be fixed. Or it was the dacoit who had caused a lot of injury and harm to the village that he was in. And many films incorporated that. But as we move along, the Thakur has disappeared, the dacoit has disappeared, and we have other forms of villains. Politicians sometimes feature as villains. And the whole scenario has changed. So I think that is, as the country progresses, as the thinking progresses, as each generation sees what this generation is up to, or what the people or the polity of the country are up to, and they keep making those changes.
100 years is a very long time, and as you rightly mentioned, the Indian movie has only gone from strength to strength. What do you think accounts for this incredible durability, this phenomenal staying power that the Indian movie seems to have?
It's a great identification with the people of the country, and that they are the ones that love us, show us their affection, want to keep going there again and again. It's like asking me, why does everyone in India like cricket and not football or baseball? It's just that something that has grown with us. And I would again revert back to the content of Indian cinema and the much criticized song and dance routine, or the going around the trees, which has become almost a metaphor for describing Indian cinema. But if you go back in time, or you go back to the small towns, you will find that religion has always played a very important role. And whether it was the Ramayana or the Mahabharata, their enactment during the Shera or during festivals has always been enacted with music and song and dance. And perhaps there is a great identification with that aspect of art and culture which has been imbibed into cinema.
Okay, I'm going to begin with Director Sujoy Ghosh's question. What made you fall in love with Hindi cinema? What did you see in yourself that made you feel confident enough to pursue cinema?
I was always on stage, and I cannot remember a single year in my life when I wasn't on it. Right from kindergarten, where I played, I think, a chicken. Yeah. Every year in school, you enacted, your school play. You were in it, and when you went to college, you joined the drama society. When you came out of university and you were looking for a job, you joined the dramatic society of the city. There was always this fascination of being on stage. I don't know what it is. It was just something of wanting to do something different, or enacting a different character, playing to an audience. I had no idea of going into films, though it was a very fascinating prospect. And when you saw films, you identified with many of the characters and the leading men, and you liked what they did, and you appreciated their work. But you never thought of actually going there, because you never knew how to get in there. I was unaware of the Film and Television Institute that the government has instituted in Pune, but they came across an advert during that time when I was working in Calcutta, or Kolkata rather, which was inviting young aspirants to come and join the Indian film industry. And this advertisement was from 5 or 6 very prominent producer directors of the Indian film industry. And were you to be selected through a process of examination, and that was the interesting part. There was an examination. You would be given a screen test. You would be asked to enact something, and then your caliber would be judged according to how you performed. And that was very attractive to me, rather than just somebody liking your face and saying, okay, you're on. So that was very interesting. I applied for that. I got rejected in the preliminaries, and then your heart was kind of set to pursue this line. So I resigned from my job, and then I landed up in this wonderful city with just my driving license, because I felt that if I didn't become an actor, I would become a taxi driver.
Well, clearly that didn't need to happen. Writer Namita Gokhale has sent in a question. She says, as the son of a great Hindi poet, and as somebody who has done a lot to revive the use of pure yet colloquial Hindi through programs like Kaun Banega Crorepati, I want to know what you think of Hindi and Hindustani, about how purist or flexible a language should be, not just in cinema, but also in literature or in general usage.
It's a very vast question.
Yes.
Firstly, we have to realize that Hindi is one of our national languages, as are many others. And each have their importance, and that is the uniqueness of the country. Each prominent language from different parts of the country has contributed hugely towards the culture, towards the literature, towards a lot of the social thinking that the country has been through. And that's what the beauty of India is all about, its diversity. I believe that all languages should be promoted, and I think that there are many efforts being made right now as we talk by groups of people, by institutions that want to propagate this idea, not necessarily to combat the factor of English, but to enhance their own tongue, their own mother tongue. Yeah. And if there's any contribution that I or any others are making towards this, I would welcome that. Many people have come to me who want me to be associated with such movements, and I would readily and very happily do that.
Actor Manoj Bajpayee has sent in a question. Why has it become so fashionable to talk about the subtlety and underplay in performance rather than to talk about the most important aspect of any performance, which has always been characterization? And if one's characterization allows for it, can an actor leave aside being subtle and go a notch higher? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree with him. If a character is loud in nature and somewhat extravagant and more exhibitionist, why shouldn't he be that? And you're not going to be judged by the fact that you're playing to the gallery or you're being too overt. I think you're going to be judged by the fact that this is the character and this is how he behaves. I would agree with him, absolutely. I'm a great admirer of his, and I think he's one of the finest talents in the country. And each and every role that he has portrayed, he has never ever digressed from the character. And that's very difficult to do in Indian cinema. A lot of people have played similar roles and continue to play similar roles, irrespective of what the characterization may mean, and have done well. And that is perfectly fine. If the audience wants to continue seeing them in that manner, so be it. And each actor should have the liberty of his own thought process before he accepts or performs a role. This is how he feels he should perform a particular role, and I would agree with that.
I'm sure he'll be very happy to hear that. So the next question is from director Tigmanshu Dhulia. He asks, our industry being star-driven, who according to you is the cog in the wheel, the director or the actor?
Which wheel?
I think he means the movies.
Yeah. No movie is going to succeed or even come onto the floors without certain basics. You need to have a story, you need to have a director, you need to have finance, and you need an actor to perform it. I think it's a very cohesive element that is required to make a film. I don't think that there can ever be a cog in this wheel. I believe that without the cooperation of all these elements, you will not have cinema. But if you were to push me to the wall, I would say the director, because he's really the captain of the ship. He decides on the story. He will go and select which character or which artist or which star needs to be playing a particular role. He's the one that will edit the film and bring in the music and make the presentation to an audience. So I would, if I'm pushed to the wall, yes, I would say it's the director who is in charge of each product.
Coming from you, I'm sure a lot of directors, including Tigmanshu, will be very happy to hear that. So the next question is from writer and historian William Dalrymple. He says, while India is producing some of the world's best contemporary literature, why is the quality of most Indian scripts not up to the mark?
Lack of education. The level of education is not equal or universal. And that's one of the tragedies of the country. There are huge efforts being made now by the government to bring the level of education up. An educated society will be able to decipher, feel the differences between what is good, what is bad. And hopefully that will reflect in the kind of writing that our cinema contains. Until then, I guess you will have to take a very safe path, which is not too difficult to understand for the person who is not that educated, yet at the same time very subtly be able to pass a message. So I would give a lot of respect to Indian cinema because it has to tread this very narrow path. And always when you travel on a narrow path, you're on the edge, and it's a very difficult thing to do. But the fact that we, in a sense, bring all these factors together, unite them, is achievement itself. I use an old example all the time, and I say, where in society do you find different castes and creeds and religions and colors of people sitting under one roof, watching one film, laughing at the same jokes, crying at the same emotion, singing the same songs, except in a theater that is running an Indian film. And I think that that is one of the greatest achievements that this film industry has achieved. I was in the mid-80s. I was on a state visit to Moscow, and I was surprised to see hundreds and hundreds of Russians who were on the streets, who would mob you like you get mobbed in India, and the girls and the women would dress in Indian dresses with the bindi on their head and speak in Hindi. And I asked them, how did you get all this and how did you know all this? He said, we see your films and we learn the language. And now we are going to university, to the Hindi section, to learn Hindi in order to be able to see your film. That's fantastic. I asked a young man there once, what do you think about Indian cinema? And why do you like it? He said, when I see an Indian film and I come out of the theater, I have a smile on my face and a dry tear on my cheek. And I thought that just so beautifully summed up what this foreigner thought about our films.
So the next question is from director Rituparna Ghosh. You're very reverent and interested in regional cultures, and you found a connect with regional cinema through your directors. For instance, you found a connect to Bengali cinema through directors Sujoy, Shujit and me. Yet, you haven't actively been involved with the regional cinemas other than Deepak Sawant's Ganga Devi. This is despite the fact that you're very proficient with languages. For instance, your Bengali is better than that of many Bengalis themselves. A greater involvement from you in regional cinemas would give them a greater representation. Would you consider this?
Firstly, I think Rituparna Ghosh is wrong. Every time I used to open my mouth to speak Bengali on his set, they used to all go into the corner and sort of snigger. Look at this guy, he doesn't even know how to speak a language, despite the fact that he has a Bengali wife. But I would try. I would sincerely try. It's just that after a certain age, you feel as though you're going back into school again, and you don't want to do that. So, but yes, I would happily, make an effort to learn a language. I want to learn many languages of the country. I'm fortunate that my upbringing and my birth and my life has been pretty varied. My father was from Uttar Pradesh. My mother was a Sikh from, now in Pakistan, from Lalpur. I married a Bengali. My brother married a Sindhi. My son has married a Tulu. My daughter is married to North India. We have almost all parts of the country within one family, so we really should be quite proficient at all these languages, but never really tried it for cinema. But if there is an offer, yes, I would definitely.
I'm sure Ritu will be very happy to have that on record. So the next question is from artist Jitish Kalat. He says, for an actor, at one level, the self is both an instrument and a laboratory. Yet, at another level, your laboratory involves an unfathomable number of individuals that follow your work. How does one match the changing self with an ever-changing audience?
I would imagine that would be dependent upon the person that constructs the story which we have to enact. They are the geniuses. They follow very closely what happens socially, morally, politically, within the nation. They then conceive that this is something that could make a good story, and this is something that needs to be spoken of or put into cinema or film so that it reaches a larger audience. And many of the films that have been constructed in this manner do actually achieve that purpose. So they really are the people. I've just been fortunate enough to have worked with a very vast and very qualified, very efficient team of writers who were capable of picking out these moments from society and from what was going on in the country, and to convert it into a very likable, escapist cinema which would appeal to the common man. And because I was a part of that, many a times the onus of praise and responsibility comes on the actor, because that's what you see. But that is false. The true credit should go to the writers and the director that conceives it.
Music director Amit Trivedi wants to know, where your singing voice is concerned, your pitching is quite immaculate. I wanted to know if you've taken formal training in music or whether your voice is naturally this good.
Neither of the two. They have wonderful machines now which put you in tune. So you could be the most besura admi in the entire world.
But to be fair, sir, you've been singing a long while before these machines came in. So.
No, I haven't. Maybe just one song. But most of the others, they have these gorgeous machines, and they can raise your pitch, they can put you in tune by just pressing a button. And that's generally what has been happening.
So you've not trained at all, sir?
No, I've never trained, no.
Okay. Okay. All right, sir. Well, actually, there were a lot more questions that had come in, but I think we're running out of time. Okay. So with due apologies to everyone who sent in their questions, we'll keep them for another time. Right now, I simply cannot thank you enough for being here, and I sincerely hope that TBIP can live up to this honor, sir.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful concept. One of the regrets that I feel very strongly about is that a general habit amongst people in our country of wanting to keep things for posterity, to keep records, to just have archival, material which can be made reference to, or just be kept for the future generations to see and watch. And I think that what TBIP is doing is making a record, meeting people, allowing them to talk. We do many interviews, but they're either based on, promotional of a film that we're about to be releasing, or some other nondescript subject. But nobody really talks about what we go through, or what the directors go through, or what was their thinking in making a film, what were the technicalities involved. And I think that this could be a platform where all this material could come in and be useful for future generations. Not just as an outsider, but also for people who are going to be connected with cinema, to know, say, I would have loved to know today what somebody like Gurudutt, what he thought and what was going through his mind when he was making Kagaz Ke Phool, or what Mehboob Saab was thinking when he made Mother India, and what was his thought process, and how did he execute it, or how did Dilip Kumar and Dilip Saab train or figure out that this is how he was going to construct his character of Ganga Jamuna, or how Rishida and Bimal Roy and so many great directors in the past, what went on in their minds when they designed something. We have no record at all. I had a lady who was from England wanting to write a book on me, and I said, look, I don't believe in doing anything autobiographical, but if you're willing to do something on your own, you're most free to do that. She went and did a lot of research and went to Pune, to the archives where the film archives are, and she went through volumes and volumes of paperwork and magazines, and she called me and said, gosh, other than gossip, there's nothing else here of value that I can even pick on. So I think that a platform like this gives an opportunity for many of the prominent people connected with cinema to come and really talk about basics, talk their mind out. And that will be a very valuable record for generations to come.
We will always try to bear your words in mind and always try to live up to them, sir.